Today we have a great guest, an atheist, Evan Lichtblau, who's an aspiring and soon-to-be philosophy student. He's coming on as an atheist that we met online to talk about evolution. We're talking about arguments from logic, beginning of creation, and morality. That's what we're talking about today on the Things You Don't Hear in Church podcast. My name is Derry.
And my name is Ethan. And guys, go check us out on Instagram and YouTube, Spotify. Those are probably the three main places we're posting. Obviously, Apple Podcasts as well, anywhere you get your podcast. But check us out. And yeah, if you want to come on the podcast and challenge us on something, obviously we're having Evan on today to do that. So it's going to be a great episode. Let's get into it.
Evan, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Me and Evan met in the comments, like I said, and we were talking about some versions of the fine-tuning argument based off of somebody else's post. And we just wanted to have him come on, wanted to talk about those kinds of things. He's an atheist and is unconvinced of theism. And so we'll talk about that. But first, I just wanted to see, like, what's your journey been like with philosophy and your belief systems in the past? Have you always been an atheist? Has it changed? All that kind of stuff. Like, what's influenced you?
Yeah, so I guess I'll tell my story with this because it did start quite young. I think I was 6 years old when my grandma died. And my dad was always very atheistic. My mom's more agnostic. She grew up in Catholic school. But I was, at first I was thinking, no, death is the end, because that's kind of what my dad had been telling me. And that scared me so bad when my grandma died. And I realized that this was going to happen to me. So
wow.
I used to absolutely be freaking out at 6, 7, 8 years old, just terrified of the thought of death in an atheist worldview where there's no afterlife or anything like that. I didn't really think about gods or anything in a positive or negative way. It was more just I felt intuitively it's game over when I die. And I really didn't want this to be true. So I did try to search out and pray and be like, God, please be out there. I know you're listening. If you're listening, please do blah, blah, blah. Please be out there. And I would always have my biggest wish as a little kid was for there to be an afterlife. I asked my friends and they'd be like, oh, I want to be a soccer player or whatever. And I'm like, oh, I hope there's some afterlife. I really want to happen.
I love that.
So I was really, really scared for a lot of my childhood. I still am, but I'm able to talk about it without really emotionally feeling it, if that makes sense. But yeah, so I really wanted there to be a God, and I really tried to pray and find it. I wasn't necessarily Christianity specifically, but just some sort of grander idea, grander plan, and especially where death doesn't just cease my existence. I went through a lot of phases, I would say, in middle school and early high school where I was agnostic. I wouldn't have called myself an atheist at that point or religious. I would have said, no, I'm agnostic. I think there's probably something out there. I was thinking of, I guess, the hard problem of consciousness without really naming it. But I was thinking, oh, why do I actually feel? This is proof that there's some soul, there's something out there. And that was kind of what gave me hope for a while. Was the thought of, oh, well, if it was just evolution, then I should be like a robot without actually feeling anything. I should be able to seem like I'm alive, but not really actually feel it. I think I was 14 telling my friend about that. Although I might be getting...
You were aware of arguments for consciousness when you were 14?
I didn't have a name for it. It wasn't I was searching up online oh, what is qualia? What's the debate surrounding that stuff? It was more just an intuitive thing. I was oh, well, if I evolved, why should I be like this? And I would also talk to my dad about it, who's influenced me a lot. He's very smart. But he's super atheistic, and he would kind of shoot me down. I could never challenge him properly, but I would always try to challenge him and kind of almost argue for, not necessarily for God, but for something. And then I started, I would say I was agnostic, and I wasn't Christian, but I wanted there to be something. And then I started kind of looking at debates and stuff online. I don't know, maybe I was 16. I'd be in comment sections doing the same stuff I was with you. More on TikTok than Instagram, though.
Sure.
And I think that kind of honed my, I don't know, it honed my arguments a lot. And like I did some research. I would talk with ChatGPT and argue against it, and I would be like, okay, take the opposite side. And I guess just the more I thought about it, the more I was like, well, I really don't think there is something out there. The hard problem of consciousness, if you call it, that, I think that's still a unsolved mystery in a way, but I don't think it doesn't convince me of a soul or afterlife or anything of that sort. And so I guess I just did a lot of these arguments online, kind of looked into it, and walked out feeling more atheistic as the time went on. I kind of also learned though that I didn't like atheism. I mean, not just because of the death, but as a philosophical position, it felt a bit unsatisfying. But that's because to me all of the positions are unsatisfying, and it just seems the least so. So I guess that's my story with religion, atheism, how I kind of went from being at first just unknown, but feeling like I was going to die an atheist death one day and that there was nothing I could do and it was scary, to really hoping for something to be out there. And then kind of, thinking about that and talking with my dad and my friends, and then go looking at it more and going back more to a harder version of atheism.
So right now you consider yourself an atheist, even though you don't like it.
Yes. Well, I'll tell you this. I don't want atheism to be true. I don't necessarily want Christianity. Well, depends on the version. Universalist Christianity, where everybody eventually goes to heaven, I'm chill with that. Versions where the majority of people go to hell forever, no, I really don't want that to be true. But I definitely don't want death to just be the end. Like I would I would obviously prefer some afterlife or positive reincarnation or something like that. I just don't believe in it. I don't think it's true, and I don't think. I mean, that's my feeling on it.
Got it. I love it. When you say your mom was more agnostic and your dad was more of the atheist, how does that come into play? How is she more agnostic?
Well, she'll call herself an agnostic. I think she is more atheistic than she is religious, but so she doesn't believe in a direct God, but she is much more open to the idea of there being something else, something grander than my dad is. My dad is very, very atheist. He's very, he's a total materialist. He's more atheist than I am, and I'm quite atheist.
Cool.
But he would talk about it a lot more than my mom would. Because my mom is less interested in that stuff. She's more, oh, well, there could be something, there might not. I have work to do. I have whatever. I'm not as much going to think about this. Whereas my dad's much more, he thinks about a lot of stuff, but that's one of the things that he'll talk to me about. So I can kind of see his perspective and challenge my own beliefs and then try and challenge his. I mean, he's a good argument checker against me.
Yeah. So your mom grew up Catholic or going to Catholic school. Did your dad grow up anything?
My dad grew up and he was in he originally went to, I think, a Jewish school, but he never really believed it.
Sure.
I think his dad does believe in God, but he didn't really he wasn't super no, you have to believe this to my dad. And then I just think my dad never really believed that stuff. And certainly when he was, my age, he was very atheist. No.
Cool. Well, do you have any questions for us before I get into a couple questions?
I mean, my only question would be how the podcast is going to go, but I think I'll just see how it goes and the format is and all that.
It's literally, this is the format, just going back and forth.
You can ask questions or we'll ask questions and we'll just talk about it.
Push back against our points, point out any weaknesses that we might have in our arguments so we can work on them, or you want to call them out. Feel free.
Please do the same to me.
The first thing that I would want to talk about is what if we're looking for standards of evidence, how do we evaluate them? How do you evaluate evidence? Because for myself, whenever I'm trying to decide is something true, I've been a Christian for a while, I've been a theist for a while. When I look into a theological topic, Christians talk about our differences theologically all the time. If I'm looking into a theological difference, that I have for maybe Ethan, and I'm going to argue with him about it. We're going to talk about it. I'll usually use some kind of like Bayesian analysis where I'm like, assigning a certain amount of value to each like argument based off of how strong I think it is. And then I make my conclusion not based off of like 100% certainty, but based off of a majority of certainty, based off like arguments that I've looked at. But everyone does it differently. And so that's just like how I do it. And so I was going to ask you, like, what kind of evidence are you looking for? Do you like currently see in your atheism, like there's some evidence here, but I'm not convinced. So like what kind of evidence are you looking for? What would convince you? And like how much evidence do you think there is for both sides? Just for theism in general.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think there's a ton of evidence. Okay, this might be weird. I don't think there's a ton of evidence for either side. I think it's more, at least in my case, the general observations about the world, and then being like, which hypothesis, if you're just looking at atheism and theism, makes the most sense given what I've observed about the world around me. Now, I will say I haven't looked super hard into the historical arguments. I've seen kind of overviews, but I can't really talk as to the historical arguments about the resurrection or that sort of stuff. I've more looked at it from a philosophical or metaphysical argument standpoint, you could say. So I've seen like Kalam cosmological argument or fine tuning or things of that sort that I've looked at. And then on both sides, because also I'm gonna look at the atheist arguments, like evidential problem of evil and stuff. I do think some of those are good arguments. I don't think any of them are definitive on either side. I think there can be justifications on all the sides. So I wouldn't say that, and it's not like any single argument is like, oh, this has given me the evidence to make me confident in atheism. Like it's not like I'm an atheist because of the problem of evil. In like I read it in standard form. I'm like, okay, that's why I'm an atheist. Okay, I agree with this premise. That's a strong inference. Whatever. Okay. I guess it's more just me looking at the world around me over the course of my life and saying what makes the most sense. And I think atheist is kind of an interesting label because a lot of the people who are atheists, I might not have the exact same beliefs as. So for example, I'm not entirely opposed to the idea of there being some creator. And it's like, oh, you're not an atheist if you say that. But if I think that the term creator is like, it's really hard to define. But if I did think that there was something, which again, I'm not saying I do believe this, but I'm saying I'm not necessarily against it. If there was something out there, I don't think it would have like cared about us in the sense to give us souls and afterlife, come down and interfere with our affairs. I look at the world, I see evolution, I see in different processes leading to life developing. I see a universe big enough. I think there's 10 to the 22 star systems in what we can observe. And I'm like, okay, well, it seems like with that many star systems and planets, and 10 billion years or so for life to evolve on any one of these planets. And it seems like some sort of inevitability within our universe. And so I look at this, I say, well, given that this seems like an inevitability and it seems like these indifferent processes are what drove it, it looks to me like what I would expect under some version of atheism, or a version where whatever the final layer of reality is, be it a sentient creator or not, doesn't care or interfere with us.
Very interesting. Ethan, we're gonna say something?
No, I'm just mostly listening, taking notes. Yeah, so it sounds like you're more okay with like a deistic view of a creator where he's not involved. So you could say like, yeah, the most I could go is like there's a creator, but he's not involved. He kind of just, kick the snowball down the hill and let things go as it wants. Is that kind of the proverbial view you have?
Well, yes, but I wouldn't say I necessarily believe in deism, but I'm saying I'm open to it as a possibility. Like
if you were going to be a theist, that's probably where you would land.
Yeah. I think pure naturalism right now, it makes the most sense, but I kind of flip-flop on my views. But I think there is some final layer of reality. Some like, if you look at the causal argument, you keep asking why, what caused this, and you go back forever. I think there is some uncaused cause, some final layer.
Okay.
I don't see a reason to give it the property of sentience that is ascribed to the any theistic gods or anything like that.
Sure.
And definitely not the further properties of like all loving, whatever, and
Sure.
interferes with us. Um, I could like I don't see a reason to give it the sentience, but I'm not. I don't think it's impossible that it's sentient, which is why I'm like I could be deistic. But if
Yeah.
we did give it sentience, I wouldn't give it all loving or I mean yeah, it'd be deistic if I were to give it the sentience.
I love that.
Hmm.
Thanks for that explanation. Can you explain to people just really quickly what like naturalism is?
Yeah,
Just for the
so
audience.
yeah, it's just the idea that there's no supernatural. So everything that
Cool.
exists is a part of the natural world, physical laws. There's no god or abstract creator that exists in the supernatural or higher realm or angels or demons or any of that stuff.
Yeah.
So I guess you could say, oh, well, Big Bang. I don't like the idea that the Big Bang created reality. So I guess in a naturalistic worldview, there's some natural law. It might have always existed. It could just be an infinite sea of universes and a quantum fluctuations bubbling them out. I don't know.
Right.
I'm not advocating for that view specifically, but that would be a naturalistic view where reality is just an infinite sea of probability waves and stuff that can bring about universes.
Yeah. Question about deism for a second. Going back, how do you know? Like you're saying, the reason you more so like atheism over anything else isn't really arguments that you've read, like formal arguments, but just your observation from being alive and
Mhm.
observing all of like the unconscious processes that happen in the world, alongside like the vastness of the universe with all of those unconscious processes. How do you know that those processes are unconscious and aren't guided?
Well, I can't say for certain that I know that.
Mm,
But I would say the reason I believe that is because it appears indifferent. And I'll use evolution as the example. Evolution is brutal, or just nature in general, but it's really brutal. And you can ask, I talked about this in one of my videos, but you can
mm,
ask, okay, you can say, okay, God did this intentionally. He set up the mechanisms of natural selection to bring about humans. And the reason why he allowed so much suffering in the natural world is so that humans would develop their moral and spiritual awareness in this
mm,
world of suffering. That's how they evolved to become moral, is because they witnessed their neighbor get sick. They witnessed their neighbor a hunt go wrong and get gored, and that gave them the empathy to
mm,
take care of them and work together as a cohesive society. But I don't think this argument or that rationale can be can be given to all of evolution in its full history, because humans only emerged in the last couple million years.
mm,
Most of the animals that were living and getting brutalized in nature was like over 500 million years of that happening. And most of that had nothing to do with humans.
mm.
So when I look at evolution, I look at what the mechanisms that brought us, that created us, even under a atheistic or theistic worldview. It doesn't seem guided intentionally. It seems like mutations and survival of the fittest. Um, to me, it looks like just an unintentional thing. Just what happens if you let enough time go by and you let enough life emerge and evolve and interact with itself. And life emerging itself through abiogenesis, which is the creation of life from non-life and chemistry and all that stuff. Well, I think that's an inevitability given how big the universe is. So it seems, I
Mm,
look at it, I'm like, okay, well, if the universe is so big and life will inevitably emerge on one of these planets, probably a lot more than one, but at least one that we know of, and you give it enough time, the animals will, develop, they'll fight each other, a lot of them will suffer. And through that, you get new life, you get more complex life, and eventually, if you get lucky on one of these planets, you'll get intelligent life like us, and that's where we are.
All right,
mm,
so I got a question on that, some of that stuff. So with the uncaused, I wouldn't say causer for your view, the uncaused causing thing, because you said
Mhm,
you like to go all the way back, and you're like there could be some like ground, like some foundation of reality.
mhm,
So in your view, if it's not sentient and definitely not personal,
mhm.
then are you sitting in a place where like I have no idea what it is, but I don't think it's sentient?
Yeah, more or less. I mean, I could give some
Mhm.
ideas as to what it is, but I can't say those ideas
Like
with
you're
any
okay with the
certainty.
mystery of it.
Yeah.
Okay,
I mean,
that's good to know.
obviously, I'd rather know, but
Yeah,
I think
yeah, for
there's
sure.
no way for me to know.
I know. I can tell you, and then you can know.
Well, different
Yeah, it's God.
worldviews.
I know. I just tease them. Okay, so you're okay with mystery. I think that's a good thing to just note because I think that's a really good place to be. I think a lot of times when we're talking about creation, creator, or like atheism, theism, it seems like there's sometimes I talk to atheists that they want absolute certainty, and I just don't think that any of us we get that luxury
No.
because we weren't there in the beginning, right?
Especially as an atheist, you can't really be
Hmm.
certain. I mean, I personally, I don't. I think even if I were a theist, I wouldn't be absolutely certain in it unless God like directly came down to me and like
Hmm.
literally showed Himself to me. And even then, I'd be hard to be 100% certain. I think it's hard to be
Hmm.
100% certain about anything. But especially as an
Yeah.
atheist, I feel like you really have to accept the mystery.
Okay. So
Um,
so the beginning of the universe or creation is mysterious. That's good. And then I guess one question about the thing about life is like I don't understand how someone believes that life came out of non-life. You know, like how did
abiogenesis.
yeah, like if that's the word for it, but it's like I'm
Yeah.
not a very scientific person. So it's like um yeah, like how do you get like obviously consciousness, we talked about that before the show. That's a that's a hard thing. No one really
Mhm.
knows what consciousness is. But even like how do you get life from no life? Are you saying like, well, within the universe it's ancient, we have no idea how old it is. There's been probably billions of renditions of planets trying to figure things out, and so it's impossible that nothing happens. Like it's probable that life happens somewhere and we just happen to be
Yeah.
that life that happened because there's an infinite possibilities of things happening.
Yes and no. Uh, I mean, I think in our universe, I don't know if it's the only one, could be a lot more, but in our universe, there's a boatload of tries, you could say, like tries to get life.
Hmm.
But I also don't
Mm.
think abiogenesis, the formation of life from non-life is that hard. I
Okay.
so
Hmm.
you'll probably disagree with me here. And I'd have to go back and pull up my old stuff on it because I wrote some stuff on it like like months ago. I think it took about 500 million years on Earth for it to form. Um, that's we see the earliest signs of life 500 million years after Earth became like habitable. Um, and what's interesting is it took. I might be having the numbers off, but it's somewhere in this ballpark.
Mm.
I think it took around 2 billion years to get from once we get the signs of abiogenesis, life from non-life successfully working. It took about 2 billion years to get from there to the next step of life, which is um, eukaryotes. It's some complex stuff that I don't really remember. But the
Mm.
point is that to me, it doesn't seem like the formation of life from non-life is actually the hardest step to get to complex life. Like I think the formation of life from non-life actually isn't that hard, given a few 100 million years and enough planets, whatever. But I do think that getting from that to multicellular life to animals to complex ones that live on land with a protective atmosphere, and then from that to intelligent life and civilizations, I think that's really rare and
Hmm.
unlikely. Given enough tries, I think it's not as rare.
Hmm.
But I don't think the formation of life from non-life is that mysterious. You could say it's chemical interactions and like protein bases, which we know that existed on Earth during this time period. The protein bases which build RNA, and as soon as you get one successful like proto RNA that can self-replicate, just a molecule that can replicate itself, it'll automatically start undergoing natural selection because the ones that replicate survive, the ones that replicate wrong or don't survive, die off.
Hmm.
And just let that happen and get the right conditions, get lucky enough, get enough chemicals mixing, and life will eventually develop over hundreds of millions of years and then a few billion to get to the complex life. But yeah.
Mm.
Okay. Because then I would wonder. Sorry, Darren. Then I'll let
Okay.
you jump in here.
Yeah.
So then I'm curious. I would just say yeah, I like the appearance of age argument. So like I don't think in my mind as a Christian, I'm like I don't care how like it doesn't matter necessarily how old things are as an argument
Mhm.
against theism because that's not that doesn't stop theism because I can just say either like Redeemed Zoomer I think believes it's coherent. I know you made a video where you're saying it's not. I would probably just say yeah I don't think the Earth is that old either. I don't think it's 6,000 years old. I'm not like on board with those guys. It's probably older. I just think it's like look it's old. It has the appearance of age in some regard. I don't know what I believe about evolution. I don't think God created through evolution. I think God intentionally created each species and and humanity to take care of Earth. It doesn't matter to me if it's 6,000 or not years old. But I'd say that because a lot of young Earth creationists will be like hardlined at 6,000 years. I'm like, that's probably not. But all I'm saying, like, I think the species were created intentionally. Things were created as they are intentionally. And so I would just say, like, that's kind of like maybe a side conversation if you're trying to prove Christian or like theism. Would you agree where it's like, yeah, that's not like the main thing. It's just like
About
or
whether
for you to
species
sit
were
like
intentionally created or not.
no, like evolution. Like, I could say
Well,
like, oh, I don't
I think
believe in
evolution
revolution.
is important because if we didn't if I didn't believe in evolution, I would be much less atheistic, if not theistic. Um,
Mm-hmm.
like evolution, I guess I always believed in it, but like learning about it and it very much influenced and contributed to me being atheistic.
Mm-hmm.
I do have one question about you because you said you think that God intentionally put forth all the species that are here today. It wasn't this random mechanism. It was this very intentional, like
Yeah.
however old the Earth is, he put the species that are on Earth today for a
Mm-hmm.
reason.
Mm-hmm.
But like, what about the species that died off, or like extinct species, say Neanderthals or any
Yeah.
of the other extinct human species? Like, what was the purpose of that?
Yeah. So Neanderthals being like the kind of human things that were
Yeah,
like,
there was like
yeah.
I think there was like 10 like species that
I've
were
heard. So
similar
I
to
haven't
humans.
studied the science at all. I just it's not like the area where I really like
Mhm.
nerd out in and like get into it. That's probably more like theology or like some parts of philosophy for me. But I've heard that there's like not that much evidence that they're like they find like a little bit of a bone and they construct a whole thing off of it. So I don't
Of
know.
Neanderthals?
I don't know. I'm saying like what I've heard, what I think I've heard. I haven't done any research, so I couldn't talk about Neanderthals to like strong degrees. But I guess I would just honestly say I'm like, I don't know. Does it like I don't know how much it matters. Where I'm like, I don't know. Could they be like are they I guess you could educate me. How do we know they're like how much different are they than Homo sapiens?
I mean a fair amount. I'd have to look up like if you wanted specific evidence of their existence, but I'm sure it's
Mm-hmm.
more comprehensive than a few bones. I
Hmm.
mean, I know we have even like Neanderthals, we have cave paintings from that we're pretty confident was painted by Neanderthals, and we can trace the genealogy. So we have Neanderthal DNA in most modern Europeans.
Hmm.
There was another species called Denisovans, which lived in Asia, that a lot of Asians have like 4% DNA from. In
Okay.
Africa, there's different species. There's one species that's called ghost DNA, because we don't actually know the species it came from. We just know it was similar to us, but not actually Homo sapien. And it's up to
Mm-hmm.
19% of the DNA in some parts of West Africa, I think.
Mm-hmm.
It varies, like 2% to 19%.
But they're like
Um,
definitely not. But they would they be a
but
type of
they
human?
weren't Homo sapiens. They were a type. So they were humans are like all of us, like Neanderthals, Homo sapiens, which is us,
Mm-hmm.
Denisovans, Homo erectus, whatever, all those species. So we're all humans. We can interbreed and produce children, which happened.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but
Would they
we're,
be a
you know, the Homo
different class
sapiens.
of like we're like this type of human, but would they be
Mhm.
like similar to like pygmies or like we a lot more? Do you know the
What
pygmies
do
in
you mean?
Africa? They're like
I
4 foot
don't.
tall people. Okay, so they're like a real people group right now. You can look up. Their whole people group's like hobbits, basically. Like they're
Shoot.
proportionate. They're like 4 feet tall. I think the term is pygmies. Um, and they're very small people. And so I'm wondering, like, is
Mhm.
that something that's similar? Because then it'd just be like if all those, if unfortunately something happened, they all died off, and like we found them later, we'd be like, oh, this is a different type of human. It's like, well, no, they were like alive with us. They're just like unfortunately that species just or that species that type of human, their people group just died out. Like people groups die out,
Yeah.
right?
I think it is a bit more than just like the size of the bones, though. That is an interesting point. don't really have an answer for that directly, but what I can say is that I do think the fossils for like Neanderthals, for example, are distinct enough that we can confidently say, no, this was not Homo sapiens. It's not like this is a group that, you know, is a Homo sapien that split off and got isolated and looks like us. Like, no, this is a different species altogether.
Mm-hmm.
Like for Neanderthals specifically, I can say that with pretty high confidence.
Mm-hmm.
We know, and we can trace the record, not just of us, but we can trace the record of extinct ones like before Neanderthals that go out that we descend from, like
Mm-hmm.
Homo habilis, Homo erectus, Australopithecus, that go all the way back. And some of them, you know, like you can kind of trace it back to where they look a lot more like, I don't say monkeys because I think we share a common ancestor, but they look a lot more, you know, like the tree dwelling ones that had fur and look nothing like us, that we can trace it all the way back to.
Yeah.
You know, primitive
Which is
primates.
Mm-hmm.
I think the fossil record has some pretty solid evidence for this.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that's that's my 2 cents on it.
That's fine. Derry, you want to jump in on the evolution
Yes.
conversation?
I would rather go back to abiogenesis because I just think it's more productive of a conversation.
Right.
I mean, okay, two problems I have with just saying that life evolves from non-life, and that's just an unconscious system. One, like, I don't know if it's an unconscious system. That's one of my biggest problems with it. But also, I don't know where, like, when it comes to abiogenesis, like, and a chemical reaction causing DNA, like, we know where it comes from, but we don't know where the message is. Like if it's like a message written on a page, like, we know where the page and the ink come from, like the chemical reaction, but we don't know where the coherent message of the DNA, like the code in DNA, comes from itself. And complexity, like a code like that, usually comes from some kind of mind. So first, I don't know where the complexity of the chemical reaction in the system itself comes from, because it goes back to your initial problem of, like, there's some kind of beginning thing that causes the complexity that we see in the universe. First part. Second part, maybe we just don't understand it. I don't know where the actual message on the page comes from. I can understand abiogenesis and that there is a page and that there is ink, but I don't know how, like, the message of the page that I'm reading, which is like reading the DNA, comes from. Does that make sense?
So, like, let me try to rephrase what I think you're saying, and then tell me if I got it right. So what I think you're asking is like, where did the code in the DNA, like the blueprints that made up the cells and whatever, where did that code itself come from? Sure, we can say how the proteins built the DNA, the proteins existed, but how did that actually translate into code that could self-reproduce and be complex and develop complex life? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. That's the second half of the problem. The first is that the system exists in the first place.
I think the system existing, it just ties all the way back to the origin of the universe and multiverse, whatever reality itself is. I think
So it just has to be that way.
yeah. I think it's a separate point from abiogenesis. Like, how did the system of abiogenesis come out?
Let's talk about abiogenesis first, then we'll go back to that.
So, okay, I have to clarify, I'm not a chemistry expert. I've done some research on this. But how did the code itself get there? So I'm going to give what I think is, like, the best explanation I can give, and we would all do better to look at what people who are more into chemistry have to say about this. How did the code get there? I think so. You have proteins like a C, like they call it the primordial soup. It's like a C where chemical reactions are happening. You have the basic proteins that build RNA are present in this C. We know that these proteins can develop naturally because we replicated it in a lab. We couldn't replicate them turning into RNA, but we could replicate getting the proteins in the first place. So these building blocks for life. Now imagine you have, 500 million years, say, where these chemicals are being washed together in vents and all sorts of stuff. Lightning is striking. You have all sorts of chemical reactions happening. And all you need is a few of these proteins to align in the right way that builds the structure. And all the structure needs to do is be able to replicate itself. As soon as you get that, and assuming it doesn't die off immediately and it can replicate long enough to have a big enough population that even if some die, others survive and replicate, then it'll become more complex as they replicate due to mutations. So one might have a protein here instead of right here, and that'll change how it ends up developing and how it might change the replication. And you let that play out for another few hundred million, maybe a billion years or so. I don't know. I think abiogenesis is 500 million years. So you let that play out. So a long time for this stuff to be happening, quadrillions of chemicals interacting, whatever, and it gets to be more complex over time.
Right. Yeah, I understand that hypothesis. I just know there's no known scientific answer right now to how we actually get that code in the DNA. And it doesn't mean that there isn't an answer for sure, right? It just means that we don't know. And it seems like a guided process to me. Like for all those things to happen,
Why?
of course they can happen. They can happen, like you said, given enough time and enough chances. Like anything can happen given enough time and enough chances. I just think I have to assume like some kind of multiverse theory to get that many chances to occur.
I don't think you need a multiverse for that. You
think
might
so?
need a multiverse for fine tuning, but it's a separate rabbit hole.
Sure. We're talking about one
Yeah.
aspect of fine tuning.
But I think with regards to just the formation of life on Earth, again, 10 to the 22 star systems in just what we can observe. The universe itself is almost certainly bigger than the observable universe. What we can observe is just how far how long it has taken to reach us. So it's reasonable to assume it's bigger. But even just in our observable 10 to the 22 star systems, about 10 billion years, I think, of peak planet formation. So 10 billion years times 10 to the 22 star systems. So it's a lot of time. It's a lot of. It seems like that chances dwarf the improbability of abiogenesis by a large amount. I wouldn't be personally surprised if abiogenesis happened a lot in the Milky Way alone, which is way less chances. I think complex intelligent life is a lot rarer, as I said. So I don't think we're ever going to interact with aliens because of how far apart the distance between stars and stuff. I don't think we're ever, unless we can get faster than speed of light travel, which I don't think we're going to get. I think we're just stuck where we are and they're stuck where they are. But I think that
you don't think
there's definitely enough chances for life, What?
You don't think we'd ever get that technology? I thought we could.
Not with what we have on Earth.
To build the Dyson sphere.
This is a slight rabbit hole, so I'm not going to go too in depth here. But I think there is it's very easy to look at the last 200 years and say, wow, look how exponentially fast technology has increased. We went from saying man is never going to fly in a million years and the Wright brothers fly a few years later or whatever, right? Look how fast. Then we're going to the moon. Then we're doing this. Now we have computer. Now we have AI. We're soon going to crack the genetic code and get good genetic engineering. I mean, who knows how far it's going to go? But I also think that there are physical limits of the universe, energy limits, laws, and there is no known mechanism except for wormholes to actually get faster than speed of light travel. And wormholes don't seem very promising, although I'm not an expert on it, but it doesn't seem very promising that we'll actually be able to utilize macroscopic ones big enough to get human ships through. And as a general law, anything operating in normal physics can't travel faster than the speed of light because it's like literally it's like a hardwired code of how fast information can travel.
I love that.
I guess one of the issues I have with the idea of just the universe has like an unknown number of massive reiterations to try to get it right, and we happen to be the one to get it right. That just seems kind of incredibly convenient for the atheist, just to be like,
why?
Well, it's like, oh yeah, I mean, eventually it just clearly had to figure itself out, and it's like we I don't know if we can actually say that that's the case, because it's like I used to use this example, and obviously it's a little bit more dumbed down. But it's like if you put all the ingredients into a box to make a book, like the cardboard, the paper, the ink, the different colored ink, and you just let it, interact endlessly with each other forever, it's not going to produce like words and the glue making binding the book correctly and the artwork. And it's just like really unlikely that's going to happen. And so just to say, if I was like, oh, how do you know God doesn't exist? And you're like, well, because it seems like it's just like there's an unlimited amount of possibilities of things happening, and so therefore it is possible that we evolve and become this thing. That just seems like okay, but that's not like getting down to like if that's the case, then isn't it possible if there's an unlimited amount of options of things happening? Couldn't all that have created a god? If that makes sense.
Um,
I'm
I
just
don't know. I don't
wondering,
know
like
if
it's just
I,
like
I don't know if I agree
in
with
my
you.
mind, I'm just like it just seems convenient where it's like, oh yeah, like so your answer is like because then it's like it's like no matter what anyone says about like oh this could be evidence for God, this could be evidence for God. I guess we could get to the moral philosophy stuff. That's more where I like to hang out, but it'd be like oh this is just happening because we have billions of renditions of it failing and we just happen to work out. But it's like you don't know. In my mind, it's like, but that doesn't mean you know that life would have worked out had not a conscious entity intervened. I guess that's what I'm
Okay,
saying.
well,
I'm like,
I
does
guess
that make sense?
here's yeah. I think I understand what you're saying, and I guess here would be my response is that I think it would be very convenient to say that if we didn't observe how many tries. So like if all we could observe was our star system, just the sun, the moon, Mars, Jupiter, whatever, or like the ancient Greeks or whatever, while we don't have the advanced space viewing technology, and someone or an atheist say, no, I think there's infinite tries. It would be very convenient. And it's like, well, why do you think there's infinite tries? You're just saying that to rationalize the improbability of how we got here. But when we can look out and we can see how big the universe is, we can see how many planets there would be, how many stars there would be to have these tries. I don't think it's convenient because you're basing it off of an observation. You're saying, no, there literally are this many tries. We can't exactly calculate the probability of abiogenesis, but we can try to, model it and say how rare and hard it would be. And if those odds are much lower than the number of tries and years and, quadrillions of chemical interactions and whatever, then I don't think it's like convenient or a ad hoc rationalization or whatever. I think it's the natural jump when you look at the evidence. Now, I don't think that's an argument against a conscious creator. It's not saying no, there is no
Yeah.
conscious creator because this is probable. It's more saying this fits under the atheist worldview. The atheist worldview can explain this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hear it. Because I guess, yeah, and then going back even a little bit to earlier conversation, and we could just, we might eventually want to get into other fun topics with atheism and theism. But I just
We
am like,
can, yeah.
man, like we know life. In my mind, I thought it was a scientific principle that life begets life. So I'm like, how is it the case that like non-life begets life? That just doesn't make any sense. Because you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I don't know. I've seen this before online, the life and non-life. I think the idea that life has to come from life, like that's never been really convincing. I wouldn't call it a principle. It's more that we haven't been able to replicate abiogenesis. So we
Well,
haven't
could
been
you
able to in a
say?
lab. We
Yeah,
haven't
well,
been
you
able
could.
to like make a lab and say, oh, we prove that abiogenesis can happen. Of course not. And we
Mhm.
probably never will, because this is a process that took 500 million years at least on Earth.
So
Right?
could you say for fun, using you said you want to observe things. We've never
Mhm.
observed as humans life coming from non-life.
Yeah.
So then how does the atheist then say, well, that's what happened in the beginning? Because if the conversation is we have to work with what we can observe,
Mhm.
then it's like, well, we've never observed life coming from non-life.
Yeah. But we have observed RNA, we have observed proteins, we have observed how they interact, we have
But isn't that
observed the
all
age
life?
and size of the universe. Well, we haven't observed life coming from non-life, but we've observed what makes up life. We've observed proteins and how they kind of form. And we
Yeah, I mean,
have
I could say
theories
I
and
could
models that
observe.
can explain very well. So I can't say with absolute certainty that no,
Mhm.
abiogenesis happened. I am 100% confident because I wasn't there for it.
Right.
But it definitely makes the most sense if we have models that can explain how it would
Hmm.
work. They say, well, look, you can never observe this, but this is how it would work. These are roughly the odds based on what we know. These are how
Mhm.
many tries we had. This is how many years we had. I think you say, I think this is the most rational conclusion, or that's what I would say, is I think
Okay.
this is the most rational conclusion given that, even if I can't directly observe it.
Yeah. And let me know if I'm presenting your argument right, because I don't want to make it like misrepresent, but it sounds like
Mhm.
what you're saying is like we don't know how life formed, but we know we can observe the building blocks of life. So that'd be
Mhm.
like saying like, hey, I don't know how this house got here, but I can see there's wood and I can see there's planks and I can see there's bricks and I can see there's nails and I can see there's a house. So I don't know how the house got made, but I know that it, like, you know, if we left it to like random chance for millions of years, it's possible the house got made. But it's like, yeah, you're talking about the materials. You can observe the materials, but how those got organized in a way to produce life, it seems much easier and much more logical to say, oh yeah, creator did that.
Well, I don't think the house analogy works great because the house is static. So the house is like a finished product. So it would be one thing if like you didn't have natural selection, but you said we had a sea. Say you have on Earth a sea of proteins and things that would make up DNA and RNA, and then you have just observed one human at the end. And I
Okay.
about abiogenesis, that would be ridiculous to me. Like I would agree with you, but I think that's closer to the house analogy. I think with this, it's more, and we kind of do have models that would show how this would happen. So it's not like saying I have no clue how abiogenesis happened. It just happened because of chance. We have models that would say, okay, the DNA could form like this. It just needs one simple RNA like this. The chances are blah blah blah, and then the RNA goes through natural selection, which is what gets to the house. Is like if you had a, I don't know, a tiny house that could make a slightly bigger one, that could make a slightly more complex one, and the ones that survived couldn't make new ones, and the ones that died never made new ones. The ones that survived made new ones that were better, and eventually you would get better and better houses, right? Or ones that are more likely to survive and reproduce, so to say.
Okay. So then maybe it's like, oh, I can see a tree and I see we have 2x4. So is that a better example rather than like a
What do you mean 2x4?
So like the planks of wood that make
Wood.
up the wood. So like
Okay.
or you could say like I see like we have metal and I see a pile of nails. So you're like, all we would need is that metal to be shaped somehow into a pile of nails, and the pile of nails to collide with these planks of wood, and then we can have a building. All that and like just that does seem a lot more complicated than just being like, and this is like, you know, your God taking all the moral and other observations, all the other philosophical arguments for God as well. But it just seems like so much more likely that like, oh, given everything we see, we know like we've never observed life or non-life coming from or life coming from non-life. We don't know how that it would take all these, you know, millions of billions of interactions to finally strike out one that finally works. That seems statistically improbable and probably actually statistically impossible that would happen. Like mathematically speaking, like there's an amount.
What do you think the odds are? Because I haven't looked at this in a while, but I did look into this a while ago when I learned about abiogenesis and did some research on it. And I was trying to look at roughly estimate what the odds are. So let's say you need 10 billion interactions. It's not, I'm making up this number. I'm purely making up this number. Let's say you need 10 billion interactions. And if you have, say, 20 billion tries, logically, it should follow that it would happen or it's very likely to happen.
I think the problem is it's not so much that just you want abiogenesis on this earth. You need the likelihood of the universe being formed, the likelihood of the galaxy being formed, the likelihood of the.
It's a separate.
But I'm saying, like, if we're gonna get down to, because that's what atheists believe, right? Like, not only just abiogenesis happened in evolution, but that Earth is perfectly in the Goldilocks zone, and it's the perfect size for and distance from the sun. The sun is the perfect size and heat. It's not too hot. It's not too cold. So everything, all these interactions have to happen perfectly for the sun and the position to the Earth and position to the moon. And then after all that, then you get to the problem of just creating life from non-life on one planet. So that's what I'm saying. Like, you have to extrapolate that to like trillions and trillions and trillions of iterations, and it's like, yeah, that's statistically impossible. Like, I don't know I'm not a mathematician, but we could talk to one, and they'd probably be like, yeah, just these numbers are statistically impossible. And it just seems like a lot of hard work to. It seems like so much hard work to avoid saying a God created it. You know what I mean?
I don't know if I agree with that. I would say, as to like the sun, and I guess like, you know, the sun's and the Earth's good position to the sun, but that's exactly where we would expect life to find itself. So you could eliminate, I don't know, the majority. There would still be trillions of planets that are in their respective Goldilocks zone, etc. And you would expect life to emerge on these ones. So we wouldn't expect life to emerge on, say, Uranus or Pluto because they're in the, you know, garbage zones. It's freezing over there. You're not going to get life when it's that cold. But life will find itself on the right planets. So that's exactly what we should expect. The question then becomes, is there enough tries that the probability of abiogenesis is rational. So say maybe not every star system has a planet in the Goldilocks zone, but I don't know. I'm making this number up. I have no clue. Say half of them have a planet in the Goldilocks zone.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, are the odds of this many tries, this many years, and then compare that to the odds of abiogenesis happening? It would require these chemicals, these interactions. How hard would it be when you have all the right materials, and then how rare are those materials, et cetera, et cetera. I haven't directly done this in a while, but I remember looking at it a while ago and thinking, okay, I think this is pretty common, relatively. I think abiogenesis probably happened elsewhere in the Milky Way, definitely elsewhere in the observable universe. In fact, there's some evidence that's recently come out in the last, I don't know, maybe year, that there might be life on Mars. Now we have to get those samples back to NASA to see. So there is also a chance, I mean, it literally happened on Mars, that abiogenesis happened, or it could be from the same one that on Earth. It could be some collision, that an asteroid that brought life back there, or vice versa. I don't know, but I mean, it's possible it literally happened on Mars as well. And then just it wasn't as sustainable as it was on Earth because we're in better conditions, and so it eventually died out there. Whereas in here, it developed long enough to eventually form us. But I don't think, like, I think given what we observe in the universe, and we can observe a lot of tries, I don't think it's irrational or doing any extra work to say, oh, there's no God, like it's by chance. I don't think that's doing extra work when you observe a shit ton of tries. I think it's doing extra work if you say, no, there's a ton of tries without ever having observed them, saying, oh, there's extra planets without ever having seen other planets, and we just see this. Then I would agree with you. I would say that's doing a lot of work and speculation to say, oh, there's infinite tries, therefore it'll happen. But I think with what we've observed, I don't think it's doing any extra work.
I'd love to move on to a different topic. If I can just summarize what both of you are saying really quick so we can know like where we're at. I think what Evan is saying is like, this is just what we observe. And given how much time we have, even though we don't know how abiogenesis actually like arose at the beginning, it's a good predictor of where we are today. Given all the different forms that you can go through. And Ethan is kind of saying like, yes, we can observe those things. We don't know if they happen for sure, but we also don't know where the things that make up the chemical reactions come from in the first place. Like, because he's going back further to like a complexity argument, which maybe given enough time, all those things could happen. But I'd love to move to a different topic if that's okay.
Yeah.
Would you want to talk? Is there anything specifically you want to talk about? Otherwise, I can go to stuff I want to talk about. Or Ethan.
Not right now. I might come back to some stuff later, but I'm happy right now. I will say, you said you wanted to talk about the moral, and that's where you're better at. I will say that's where I'm worse at. I probably will lose that. I can try and stand my ground.
I probably lost the scientific stuff. I didn't know what abiogenesis was till you said it.
What about logic? Would you want to talk about logic, like where we get reasoning from?
Epistemology. I can't say I'm an expert on that. I do have. I can give the basics, but I can't give like a foundation of like how can you trust your reason. I wouldn't say I'm the best prepared for that.
Okay. I've always wondered that because like as a theist, like that's one of the main things that I hold on to is like how would I know to trust my own thoughts and reason? Because I like my reason and I like studying and I like making conclusions about stuff. And if it's all just part of like the material world, I don't know how I can choose to trust it because the material world changes all the time. And I can believe that the constants will stay constant, but I have no real.
I
have no guarantee they will.
Yes. Okay.
And that gives me a lot of anxiety.
I will talk about this. I'll give my brief answer, or the best answer I can. This is on the fly. I've never done an argument about this before, so this is very on the fly.
We don't need to view this as like a winning or losing thing.
Yeah.
We just want to know what you think, and we have what we think.
Yeah. Okay. So where do I get my truth and reason from? So as you know, I am a very firm believer in evolution. I think that as we evolve, we have our brains. The brains and all that, those neurons and stuff, had to learn how to predict things in the world and how to navigate the world. And so you would have to learn some logic to say, oh, that fruit is on that tree. If I climb that tree, I will get the fruit. That fruit exists because I bite into it and I taste it and I eat it. They might not be directly thinking those thoughts, but their brain has to be able to model that. It has to model other humans. Oh, this person is, we're a social species, and that's where a lot of our socialness and empathy emerged. So, oh, this person said this girl said this. I want to go talk to this girl here in my tribe. Oh, there's an enemy tribe here, and you have to keep track of all these things and like kind of logically think about it. Oh, there's a lion, there's whatever, and if we hunt the lion using this method, using the spears, it'll be better. But maybe if we get nets, we can be even less risky. So the brain has to learn how to model itself, model the world around it, and produce arguments in its own head about why it should do this action versus that action. And that sort of thing is what led to the development of logic and these, sorts of reasonings and all that stuff. Now, is our logic perfect? God's no. Our logic isn't perfect at all. Nobody's is. Our brains are very flawed, I believe. Oftentimes we like to, like when making arguments, actually, something I learned when I was in my philosophy class was that your brain oftentimes makes up its mind like a second before the thought that you hear in your head that justifies why you should think this gets to your head. So your brain will have already decided, and then like subconsciously, and then it thinks, and you hear it thinking, and you think the thinking is the deciding, even though your brain already actually did the decisions. Our brains are very flawed and produce bad arguments all the times to lie to ourselves, to lie to others. And this is everybody. This isn't like a
Right.
one person thing. And that's why we have, some people I would say aren't very smart, but they're very confident. They call it the Dunning-Kruger effect. And I think, so I don't think our reasoning is flawless at all. And I've caught myself having terrible reasoning or biased reasoning or, motivated reasoning when I think. And so I do think we should definitely be skeptical of how our brain produces. But that doesn't mean I don't think that our brain can come to some basis of, I guess you could say, truth, as in accordance with reality. So a basic truth would be, my brain sees this glass, it produces this visual of this glass, I can interact with it. I think this glass exists. I trust my reasoning that this glass exists in front of me, in the material world or whatever. I'm not going to doubt that. I trust my general reasoning when I look at the evidence of the universe that my brain has had, and I say, okay, I think this is why I don't believe in a God, or why I think reality is this way. I can't be 100% certain of my reasoning. I think it would be very foolish to be. And I actually, if you want to talk about how I think, any epistemology or where I think anything exists, how can I trust my thoughts? How can I trust my reality? Well, I don't 100%. I like to trust my reality and think that this is real and that everything is real, but I can't. The only thing I can say with absolute 100% certainty is that something exists. Something
Right.
rather than nothing exists. I can't even say with 100% certainty that I, as an entity, exist, but I'm pretty confident in it, right?
Your experience at least exists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That could all be an illusion. It could all be fake, but something has to exist.
The
There's
illusion
something
exists.
that,
Yeah.
exactly. That's why I say something exists rather than nothing. And I think I'm mostly confident that this reality is real and I am actually experiencing it. And that my brain produces thoughts in accordance with this reality, and it tries to logically model it and make arguments about what makes sense in accordance to reality. And so I guess I would say that's where I think my logic, my reasoning, and why, I can trust my intuition to a degree, but not fully. I don't think you can be 100%. So.
Do you think that logic is created? Because that's like the explanation you're giving is from that standpoint, which there are some philosophers who think that logic and math are both created things. But I think the majority of philosophers, from my perspective right now, say that they're observed.
Okay, that's a good question. I think math is a whole other thing. It is kind of logic, but
they're very similar.
Yeah. I had to do a debate in my metaphysics class about math, and I got assigned, because we all got assigned positions, so I got assigned like the skeptic position, that numbers don't actually exist. I had to argue that one.
Dang.
That'd be hard. Logic, whether we create it or observe it, I guess you could say both. My answer would be both. I think our brains kind of create a logical argument, but it's basing that off of something that already exists. It's basing it off of truths that already exist about, so I see a bird in the tree right outside right now. You can't see that, but there's one right there.
Right.
And the bird exists whether or not I think it exists, whether or not my brain has seen the light rays and said constructed. So it is observed in that sense, but it would be created if I were to try to assign properties to this bird. I'm going to logically predict that the bird is going to fly off in that direction because the sun's there. I don't know. So I would say it would be created in that sense. As to maths, that's a whole other can of worms.
Let's just stick to logic then.
Yeah,
Let's just stick to logic. So yeah, I agree with you. When you assign properties to things, those are created. But if we're talking about the fundamental laws of logic, like the basic law of non-contradiction, like that's something that, whether observed or not observed, doesn't change, right? Like something is or is not.
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah.
It doesn't matter if like a human being like learns that or doesn't learn it, observes it, doesn't observe it.
Yeah.
Like that's a constant of the universe. I think that's the basis of the logical argument, or of the argument for logic. It's just that, where do we get that law from that never changes? And there's two kind of formulations of that. Like for the law of non-contradiction, like where does that standard, that law come from? Similar to what Ethan was talking about before, of like, or what I was talking about before, where do you get the information in the DNA itself? Like, where is the message in it? Where do you get the law from, that the system that abiogenesis comes from? Like, where, if the theory is true, like where do you get the system of logic from? Because it's not something, in my opinion, that's observed or something that's created. It's something that's observed. And if that's true, then we can trust our thoughts and our emotions if we have some kind of system that allows for that to be true. And that's what I think most theism is like a system that allows for us to trust our thoughts and emotions, or our thoughts at least, based off of logic. Because logic is not something that is, or in my opinion, is something that is not created, it's observed.
Okay, well, I would say basic, like the most fundamental statements, as in like both P and not P cannot be true at the same time, like something like that. Well, I would say that is observed. I don't think we've created that or assigned any, we might assign value to it, but we certainly didn't create it, right? Either the sun existing and the sun not existing, those can't be true at the same time. One is true in our universe, and multiverse, whatever. But in our universe, I agree, it's observed. I don't think you need a law of logic like that to come from a god. I think it can just be a statement of reality. Like a sort of brute fact. So you like a brute fact is, I don't know if the audience hasn't heard that term. Okay, it's a common enough one. It's in accordance with our reality, something either exists or it doesn't exist. You can't have both of those at the same time. I don't think you need that to stem from something sentient. So we talked about the whole cause and uncaused thing. And how I don't think that the uncaused cause needs to have the property of sentience in it to be able to have everything else stem from that. And I guess I would say the same for this basic statement of logic. So let's say the uncaused cause is a sea of quantum fluctuations or whatever. Again, I don't personally believe this, but it's an example of one. And let's say that creates new universes just via random chance over time. You get infinite universes, whatever. In those universes, it would make sense that both P and not P can't be true. I don't think that needs to come from some sentient thing. It's just once this universe becomes actualized, all the properties in it exist in a fixed manner. Like, oh, there are stars here and here. And that's just how it exists once that universe comes to be. So you can't have that star and then not that star existing at the same time. It's just either the star exists or it doesn't. That's just like how the universe is set up, if that makes sense, when it emerges.
I hear what you're saying. I think this is more, and I should have explained it better. I think this is more along the lines of like attacking materialism, because if logic is just a brute fact of the material world that we have, I don't know how that can be true, because the material world is made up of things that are like not universal, are change, and are like made of material, and logic isn't made of any of those things. Logic doesn't change, and it's not material, and it is universal.
Well, but Okay, well, we could take gravity, for example. Gravity doesn't change how strong it is, right? It's just based on mass, how strong something pulls in one another, how big it
We
is.
assume.
It's
Yeah.
universal. I mean, as far as so far as we've observed, it's
Yeah.
universal. It's a constant. It doesn't change. It's fixed, and it acts in everything. And I think it's like, the same with logic. Okay, well, why is that fixed? Why is it like that? Why is gravity the way it is? Well, we don't know. That's what we've observed. And I guess I would say the same for logic. I don't think it goes against materialism any more than the existence of gravity or dark energy or any other physical constant of the universe does.
But we can't point to the material that makes it up, like that makes up that truth, that constant.
Well, we can point up the neurons that recognize it. We can't point to the material that makes the constant of, outside of the human mind, that makes the constant of, a star can exist and not exist at the same time. That is logically contradictory. There is no material that makes it up because it is like a fact of reality. I mean, you could say the same for, I don't know, gravity, as far as we know, doesn't have a material that makes it up. I don't know. There might be gravitons or something. I'm pretty sure that doesn't exist. But for the sake of the argument, or just for the understanding my point, I'll use gravity as the analogy. It has no material that makes it up, but it still very much exists as a force of the universe. So things can exist without. I guess it does sound, when I say something can exist without being made of a material, does sound contradictory to materialism, because materialism says everything is material.
Right.
But I don't think you need to be
because
so extreme
otherwise,
one way or the other. I just don't think it needs sentience to be the originator of these truths, these facts, of gravity. So maybe I could say I'm not a materialist. I just don't see the point of assigning a sentient property that directly caused this and intended for this behind those things.
Okay, well, let's talk about that next then. But just for clarity, I think you're understanding my argument, because you said it again in a pretty good way. Like, if logic exists and it's not something that is created but something that's observed, it exists outside of the human observation of it. So when I am not imagining it, it's still there. And if it's not made up of matter, then it means that something exists that is there that isn't included in the material world. Therefore, there's something outside of material that exists. I've never known what to do with that, besides that there is something beyond the material world. But you could grant, like you said, that, okay, I'm not a materialist. There's some other kind of thing out there that isn't like my observation of a material, or at least a material that I'm not aware of or can't identify, that exists, but that doesn't have to come from some kind of aware creator, right? So in your idea, maybe you don't have any ideas about this, I don't know, but how does everything start, right? So when you have causation, because you said you believe in or at least you've read the cosmological argument. I think you believe in the cosmological argument that everything has to come from something, right? But that doesn't mean it has to be a god.
Yeah, I agree with the first few steps of the cosmological argument, but I disagree with I think it's William Lane Craig. He wrote out a whole thing about, and then here's why it has to be sentient, and here's why it needs that. I don't agree with the like whole latter half of the argument, but the beginning, I agree that there should be a first cause or a first reason about why something exists rather than nothing.
Yeah. I don't think the Kalam has those extra steps in it. I think it's just gets you to some kind of
I'm pretty sure
first cause.
Well, I think definitely WLC's does. Unless
I think the original Muslim one, I don't know if it did, but maybe I'm wrong.
Maybe not. I
Not
don't
that
know.
it
I looked at Craig's version when I was
Yeah, Craig has his own version of the Kalam that he likes. But in your mind, what would be the starting thing then? Because for me, I think about things beginning, and it needs a choice. Like, if there's something that like doesn't exist and begins to exist, it needs something to start it. That thing to start something usually has to make a choice to start something, right? Or something that started it. But if there's nothing to start it, then it would have to within itself make a choice to start something else. And I don't know how you get a choice without some kind of awareness or complexity.
Yeah, I guess I just don't think it needs a choice. So I guess that's where I would disagree, is that a choice is necessary for it to cause something else. So I guess I'll start at the top down of, what is reality? Well, I think there is, again, as I said when we were talking, I think there's a final layer. And we can call it F for final, So we can call whatever the final layer, the first cause, we can call it F. And theists will often say, you guys would say, oh, F is sentient. It chooses to will it wills everything else into existence. And that, it has that property of sentience. And then from there, you can derive other arguments about morality, etc., to give F more properties. But I don't see why F would have to will everything else into existence. I think the only thing F needs is that it's necessary. It's a brute fact. F's existence, whether or not it's sentient, it has to be necessary, right? And I think you would agree with me on that. That F
Yes.
is a brute fact, regardless of
It has to be
what it
necessary.
is. It is absolutely necessary, and it is the reason why there is something rather than nothing. It is existence. But then from there, anything else about like what does F actually do? Why do other things happen? I don't see why it has to be sentient and why it has to will anything else into existence. So F could be a natural law which governs a multiverse or something else. I don't know. I'm throwing these out there. I don't have a concrete, specific view of what reality is that I like to believe. Other than that, I don't see why F would be sentient or like would have to be sentient and why it would have to will things in. It feels like giving it an extra property of complexity that is unnecessary to me. Like adding another layer of complexity to it. And I'm like, well, I don't see why. I think F obviously is necessary, but then everything from there, I just think it just happens. It's just cause. I don't think it needs some sort of reason. I think the human brain like wants to look for a reason. The human brain is literally evolved to look for reasons. Why did that lion go over there? Oh, there's gazelles. Why is this? Why did that person say this? Oh, does she like me? The human brain very much wants there to be a reason for everything. And I don't think there has to be, especially with the case of F.
The version of the Kalam that I like.
After
just
your
want to
point,
say one
Derry.
thing real quick, Ethan. The version of the Kalam that I like, I forget which professor I learned it from, but it wasn't William. I can't remember who it was. But the second to last point of it says that all things that don't have to exist need some kind of explanation. And the reason F is necessary is because we exist, right? Like it's brute fact and it's necessary because we exist. We're the reason it's necessary. If we didn't exist to observe it, then, or if we didn't exist at all, I guess even if we didn't observe it, then it wouldn't be necessary because there would be no first cause. But because we exist and we aren't necessary, then we need some kind of explanation. And so that arises the question for F of why did F create? Because we need some kind of explanation. F must give us some kind of explanation for our existence.
Well, what if this is a weird deterministic theory of time that I'm not necessarily advocating for, but I'll use as the example, which is just that, when F never came to be, I guess you could say F is just necessary.
Yes.
Always existed.
Yeah.
Everything else like happened by necessity, not because F sat there and said, I want humans to come about, but just because, say, it creates, I don't know, infinite universes, again, making that up, but say it creates infinite universes, some of them just have humans via, or whatever, life via different properties interactions. Some of them have no life. Some of them have stars. I don't think it needs a sentience to say whether or not this happens. Oh, well, it wasn't absolutely necessary for humans to come. Well, I could disagree. I could say, no, it was necessary just as a byproduct of F. Not because F sat there and chose to go through it, but just as a byproduct, we came to be. And because we came to be, it was necessary that we came to be in any deterministic worldview.
Sure, but then you have to prove determinism.
Sure, I agree.
hard
But I don't
to
think I
do.
have to prove it. I don't have to prove it. I just have to say
Sure,
that it's a
give evidence for it.
possibility.
Yeah.
I have to say it's a possibility, and if it is true, then it would undermine that. Even without determinism, though, I don't think it needs to be fully deterministic. To say
Do you
that,
need to exist?
do I need to exist?
Like, is it necessary
I could
that
say-
you exist?
I mean, so if I were to go away from determinism, then I would say no. And then you say, okay, then why do you exist? I say, oh, my mom and dad, why do they exist? Blah, blah, blah. You go
Right.
back the chain of events. But I don't
Yeah.
think that you needed something to will that to exist. Rather, it could just be a byproduct. Like, I'll
A
say this,
byproduct
okay?
of, like, of how it is, like of the essence of F. It's just a byproduct.
Sure. Like, say,
I think we believe the same thing about God. Like, we exist because it's just a byproduct of how God is.
yeah. I mean, from a theistic perspective, yeah. That would.
So
Definitely.
aren't our views the same then? Like if
But I don't
if
think
you're
F is
saying
sentient. That's where we disagree. Oh, two things. One, I don't think F has to be sentient. I'll say that. I'm not positive it's not sentient, but I'm more convinced it's not sentient than I am. And then 2, regardless, I don't think it cares about us in a way in which we have souls and afterlife, etc.
So splitting those two questions, because they're different. What is your evidence on both sides of those things to say it is or is not sentient? Because I don't know how
I
you
don't
would
see
know
why
at
it
all.
would be sentient. Okay, I can't say with certainty. I would
Sure,
say
of course.
it's just about my intuition about I think of F and what it
Mm.
would be. So I don't see why I would assign the sentient property. I don't see I don't see why it's necessary, and B, I don't see why I would. Like I don't see a reason to make it sentient. And if it doesn't have to be, then whatever. It can go either way. I think it makes more sense to me that it's not, and it's just a brute thing. It's not explained. It just is. That's that's
Okay.
what existence is.
So F has existed outside of doesn't change, right? Outside of time, perfectly as
Sure.
itself, right? Because it's uncreated, so it exists outside of time, right? And so you're saying the quality of what F is to create things. That's
Maybe
one
not
of
to
its
create, but to guide, or everything else spurns from it. It's like it might not be actively creating, and you say it's not like F is like I'm gonna create a new thing every 100 years or like it's not like that. It's more just like from that everything else springs. It might have only created once. It might not have created, but rather just is existence at the final substrate of it, and just everything else exists within F. But
I feel like
like I
it
don't know,
can
this the term created kind of feels to me like a bit
spawned, yeah, originated, whatever you want to say.
yeah. Okay. Sure.
Okay,
All right.
yeah. We don't need to get caught up on the word. I'm trying to get down to like the essence of the thing of what F is, right? Because we're making some assumptions about the quality of F. And
Mhm.
we can, if we're gonna make some assumptions, like we're gonna say we can know some things about it. And so if the only thing that we can observe about F is that it's necessary that it somehow got made us or spawned us or whatever, right? Then that is a quality or characteristic of something that is uncreated and has always existed, right?
F.
Yeah. Like
Okay.
a quality of F is that it spawns things.
Sure.
I don't know if, given that, F could only ever spawn one thing. Like if being
Why?
F could never change. Like F could never begin and then end
Mhm.
something. And so I don't see how F could at one point not create and then not create again. Does that make sense? Because then F would be changing.
Well, I think F would be sort of not guided by time. So it's not like it didn't create and then it created and then didn't create. It's more just like say say you have F and then you have one more like layer behind it, right? Or layer in front of it. So you have this thing was caused by F.
Yep.
In this, everything else exists. So F could be a natural law which say governs. I'm going to go back to the quantum multiverse thing. So because that's just the easiest one for me to use. F governs an infinite sea of quantum fluctuations. F is just what this resides in. It's not actively creating new seas or whatever. It's not like I created this sea, then I stopped, then I created a new sea. It's more just like this exists within F F is there as a brute fact. This is just probability waves and then universe, whatever, new universe, different one. Now, again, I don't like to say with certainty that this specific model is what I believe. It's more just that I don't see why I would do the theistic option. And then the other thing is I don't see why it would care about life, even if it was sentient.
Right. And we can the
Go for it.
caring about life is probably a little bit further down the road than where we needed to get to, because we want to prove that F is sentient first. So I guess some questions I would ask is, yeah, like we could speculate on what F is. So is like F a physical thing? You know, is that's a question. It's like, and I know it's like probably impossible to say,
No.
but it's like, then it's like if it
It's not.
if it's physical, how did it get there? It's probably not physical. So whatever F is, it seems like it's necessarily eternal or if infinite. Like it just like you said, it's a brute fact. It's like a thing that always has been.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. I will do a clarification. I would say I prefer this model. I would prefer the idea that F is eternal in some form, as in it never had a beginning and never had an end.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I don't think that's absolutely necessary. I used to think that it was necessary. So I'd hear someone say, "Oh, Big Bang from nothing." I think that's ridiculous. How could it come from nothing?
Mm-hmm.
So I was very much on that train. Now I'm a little bit less. If you have the idea that there's no beginning moment, because so this is another model of reality I'll present. You guys are gonna call it BS.
Okay.
I even call it BS a little bit. I don't believe in it, but I don't discredit it as much as I used to, which is that it was a big bang from nothing, as in there was nothing before it, but time didn't exist before it. So reality just begins in this is when reality begins. There's nothing before it. It just this is what reality is this universe.
Created reality.
Right,
Or
right.
beginning.
Yeah, but
materialistic reality.
it's not like it came from anything. So people think, oh, nothing created something. No, that's not what it is. It's not like nothing created it. That's just it's just F is literally there might not even be an F. The brute fact is just existence itself in
Yeah, okay.
this worldview.
Right, right.
So
Well, then it's like if
I
F,
prefer the other one. I prefer the eternal
yeah,
F over this.
yeah. And
But
so
I'm
if F
not
is eternal,
I don't instantly discredit it like I used to.
yeah, okay. So I guess it's like you think F is eternal and it spawns things and it's outside of time. I'm just listening to what we talked about F is because I'm like we're trying to speculate on it.
Yeah.
I guess something is like, okay, if we use like a picture of a rock, right? This eternal rock is F from which all things come from. If it's
Sure.
not sentient, then I'm wondering like how does it do something? Like how does it like spawning or creating or things generating from it seems like something is happening. And like I don't know how to understand like something happening without a something forcing it to do that, or like a will being involved, or a mover. Like if you're like F is like this rock that's being thrown through space. It's like, okay, well, how did F get its movement? Like if F's brute fact is that it's moving or it's creating, it's like how is it doing that? What is the source of its movement? And I would think it
So
has to be
none.
sentient.
That's why it's F.
Right, I'm just saying,
Well,
like,
I understand your point.
well,
Like,
even
very
creating, right? It's like it's
intuitively,
creating.
We want to ask why F does what it does intuitively, right? We want
Mhm.
to say why does it do this? It seems like it would need a will for it to be able to act. I think the human brain really likes to intuitively ask why. But I think part of the brute fact is that it doesn't have it. Like it is.
But isn't
F
that something
is.
we observe though? Like we observe that
What do we
things,
observe?
like when we look at the world and in the universe, it seems like we observe that things happen with intention behind it. People do things because there's an intention behind it.
Well, on the macroscopic scale of humans, yes. But I mean, even in say quantum physics, we observe
Mhm.
actual randomness. We observe particles popping in and out of existence, like particles literally creating themselves. They're called virtual particles.
Hmm.
They can get created from nothing in the quantum field, but it's pretty much nothing.
Interesting.
So we do observe these things seemingly acting in a very random way, not with any intention or anything like that. And
At
you
least
say,
not
okay,
that
well,
we can
why do the
observe.
quantum particles do this? I say just because, like, right? It's a brute
so, like-
fact about what they are.
So back to F, right? It's eternal. It spawns things. It's outside of time. I guess in my mind, I'm like, if you're gonna attribute all these qualities to F, what stops you from saying, but it's not sentient? Because it seems like like you're saying, like, yes, F is eternal. We would agree, God is eternal. F spawns things. We would agree, God spawns things. F is outside of time. We agree, God's outside of time. We would say God has intentions and wills. And so it seems like we're almost talking about the exact same thing, except we would ascribe personhood
Except
to
the
the thing and you
sentience.
don't. Yeah.
Yes.
And so
Okay,
where's the
I'll explain
separation
my why.
there? Where's the disconnect? Yeah.
Yeah. So when I look at what sentience is, and humans and these sorts of things, I see it as a neurons. I see it in the brains, in this way that life is constructed, and I only see sentience there in these impermanent mortal beings. That is the only place I see sentience in the world, unless you can argue ChatGPT, but it's not sentient. So that's the only place I really see sentience. I don't see it in the supernatural. I don't see it in the universe. Obviously, I wouldn't unless God came down to me. But I only see it here, and I see it very much as a property of what we are. And so I think about what F is, and I say, why would I ascribe that to F? Does F have neurons? No. Why? Or I mean, I don't know. Maybe it does, but why? Why would I prescribe this property to it? And so I'm not saying it can't have the property. I reject all notions of F is sentient. It's more just like why would I think it's sentient? And personally, I don't see a reason. I guess I'm more comfortable with the unexplained about, oh, why would F do everything? Why does F cause things to happen? And I guess I'm a bit more comfortable just saying just because, or I don't know, just because something like that. But I don't see a reason to take the sentience I see in humans and prescribe that to the F.
Okay, so quick thing I want to point out there, and Derry, you can see it. Tell me and you both can tell me if I'm analyzing this correctly here. So it seems like you're like, I don't think F is sentient because I look at sentience among humans and I don't know why I would ascribe it to F. But earlier when I brought up like, oh, things move, like things happen because there's a thing that happens behind them, like me throwing a ball, the ball moves because I threw it.
Mhm.
So with creation, it seems like things would be created because there's a will behind it that's creating. You were like, well, we don't need to observe necessarily that because things pop in and out of existence, so we don't know why we're observing stuff happen and we don't understand it. But then when we talk about sentience, there is a resorting to what we observe. And so I'm wondering if there's a little bit of moving the goalpost or I'm misunderstanding, because it seems like you're attributing, going back to the what we can observe idea when it comes to sentience, but when there's other parts, you're like, oh, but we don't have to observe it. So how do we apply what we can observe to F?
I'm not saying that F isn't sentient because we don't observe its sentience. I want to clarify that. I'm not saying F can't be sentient because we haven't observed a sentient F. It's more like when I observe sentience, this is where I observe it. And so I would assume it's here unless given reason to believe otherwise. And I haven't, except for, oh, well, why would F go create? It seems like it would need a will because things generally happen for a reason. I throw a ball. That's the only argument I've seen for why F would be sentient. And I guess things just happen. So, for example, the moon used to be another planet and it crashed into Earth, and that's what created the moon. Like, I don't know, billions of years ago. That's what we think created the moon. Did someone throw the moon? Did an alien launch the moon at Earth? No, there wasn't really intention behind it. It was just traveling through space as a rogue planet. And it happened to collide with Earth, as things in space do, or the dinosaur that wiped out the meteor that wiped out the dinosaurs. It wasn't thrown by aliens to wipe out dinosaurs. It didn't have intention behind it, saying I'm going to crash into Earth because I will myself to crash into Earth. It just did.
But it already had motion.
What?
It already had motion, though.
We did. So I mean, we can derive back to why did it have motion? Okay, well. An explosion. Why did that thing explode? Right. Oh, well, whatever. You go all the way back to the Big Bang, then you go back to F. But I don't see why you would have to have a sentience in order for any of that to happen. I guess it just doesn't seem like it.
Well, the reason I would say, yeah, go ahead. You got to go jump in, Derry.
Everything. My definition of sentience, because it's all just like no one knows what it is. We're all just guessing. Right. My version of sentience is just anything that can make a choice. Like animals have a different version of consciousness and sentience than we do.
Yeah.
It seems like, but they still make choices. Now, maybe some people say they don't. Maybe it's just raw, like their DNA telling them what to do.
No, not in the smart ones. Well, if humans can make legitimate, if we have free will, then the smart animals also have free will.
Okay, I love that too. I agree. So some animals, anything that has some kind of free will and can make a choice is sentient. And it seems like to me, you have to be able to make a choice to start everything. And that's why I believe that I think it's more logical to say, what is the best explanation of how F began to cause things? Was it that we just don't know and it's a mystery? Or was it that F made some kind of choice? If F made some kind of choice, it's really easy for me to ascribe to its sentience.
Well, I agree. If F made a choice, it's sentient. I just don't think F made the choice. I mean, yeah, it is a bit hard because I haven't tried. I mean, I've thought about F, but I haven't really thought. I'm more so. I think about it in a more abstract way. So I think a little bit more visually. So I'm going to try to describe what I'm thinking in my head. And this isn't going to come out great. It's not going to be. This isn't going to be an argument. This is more just like me describing a model of reality. If you imagine there's an infinite sea of just like energy or something, and I'm calling it energy intentionally to be really vague about what this energy is. It's going to sound like some mystic, but just imagine an infinite sea of energy, and what caused this? We'll say F, but like F is just what it exists in. It is the ultimate, the final substrate. It's not like it's actively causing this C. It's not actively causing anything. This C just exists within F as the final substrate of why it exists rather than nothing. And then in let's say the C just has random potential to create universes over time, and over time infinite happen. And say, okay, well, why did F create the C? Well, the F didn't create the C just exists within F. Okay, why does the C just exist within F? Because it's a property of F. Okay, why is it a property of F? It just is. It's brute. F didn't will it. It just is. It's, it's what reality is at the most final layer. I don't see why I would say F, oh no, that was willed into existence by F, if that makes sense.
I just feel like you have to assume more to say that than to say that it made a choice.
I don't agree with that. I mean, like, again, I'm not against the idea that there is some sentience, but I don't think adding the sentience helps. Like, I don't see that as making more sense intuitively. And I know you guys will disagree with me. Your brains will intuitively, it'll be like, no, this makes way more sense that there was a choice and it was a decision that caused this, and that, that makes more sense. From my brain,
because we don't have to exist. For me,
sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of a determinist at this point. I guess it's slightly changing topics, but you can't really prove it. I can't prove you don't. You can't really prove it. You can argue we don't have free will because. I
have a question about F, because I feel like we're maybe, it seems like we're kind of at the end of F, maybe potentially. So I just want to get this in there before we move on.
Yeah.
So I guess I would say, does F contain what creation is? Like what material is? Did that come from F? Because if that's the case and we are sentient, then sentience came from F, which means F has the potential to be sentient, because if it all came out of it, like if I God forbid I got cut open and all my guts spilled out, if like creation is the guts of F and sentience is one of those things, then we might be able to say like, yeah, F is sentient.
Well, okay, that's interesting. So if F is in everything, so say we have F in us and there's F in this thing of chips and there's F in the glass, whatever, then yes, you could say that aspects of F would be sentient if that is the case. But I don't think you could prescribe that to the field of energy, the substrate of reality, the infinite. I don't think you could prescribe that sentience of small patches of it that temporarily exist when we exist and our neurons fire. Like when we die, it just dissolves back into it. You wouldn't say the field as a whole has sentience. Even if it has the potential for small patches of it in humans and orcas and elephants and whatever, chimpanzees, to have sentience.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, because I think that would be something where it's like, yeah, maybe F has sentience from an evolutionary standpoint if it has everything. We're like the things necessary to make trees came out of F. The things necessary to make rocks came out of F. The things necessary to make sentience came out of F. So then, if F contains these things, it seems like F would be sentient. And not that, like, maybe we're making you a Hindu and you're going to be like, everything's God. That would be, it's not where we want to end up.
Well, let me ask you this. If F is everything, if everything has F in it, including sentience, and that means that a property such as, a Taki can have F in it, you wouldn't say, okay, well, F, you wouldn't say F is a Taki or F has the potential to be a Taki. You would just say that is one of the many aspects of F which flows to everything. And I would say it's the same with sentience. It's not like F is a Taki or F is sentience itself. It's just that that's one of the things that is within it as it is everything.
Okay.
But I don't think you believe that though, because
what do you mean?
If we are a part, like if we come from F, right? F is the thing that spawned us. Then everything that we have has to exist within F in some means. Because nothing can exist outside of what F is, because it contains all things. And so if sentience is a real thing that exists within me, then sentience also has to exist within F, which means sentience is a part of F, which means F is sentient.
I mean, like, yes and no. Like, again, if Takis exist within F, is F a Taki? No. but F has talkies in it. It has everything in it.
Yeah.
And so I don't think you could say F, sure, F has the potential to be sentient, and F in some ways is sentient in the parts that are you, me, and all of us. And in that aspect, you see, yes, parts of F are sentient, but F as a whole, like its entire existence, the infinite of that is F as a whole, and saying the whole thing is one unified sentient system, that's where I would say I wouldn't extrapolate from it can have aspects of sentience to the whole thing is a unified sentient field.
Can you split F into multiple parts? Or is F one thing? Because in my mind,
like
you could split it with the English language, but I don't know if you could technically split it in what it actually is. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting point, and I think it's fluid. Like, this is going to be kind of a weird example, but if we talk about race, right, in say Europe and Asia,
we white guys talking about race.
If you talk about race, you wouldn't say that there's like, you see that you wouldn't say there's one thing as an Asian race or the white race, even if there are Indians and Chinese people and Scandinavians and whatever, right? And so you see we're all human. We're all part of the same broad thing, which is, F is everything. And some parts of F can have the aspect of being, say, Chinese, and some parts of F can have the aspect of being, say, Scandinavian, and some parts can be Southeast Indian, whatever, right? So like it's not necessarily split. It's not like there's a sharp boundary where it's like, oh, this patch of F that is nothing around it and is just completely a self-sentient, and the rest of it's not sentient at all. But it's also not like that patch. It's also not like the part that is sentient. It's connected to the rest of it, but it's not like the whole thing is one unified sentient system. Or maybe if we do like a beach, this might be a better example. Think of a beach, right? And say I make a sandcastle on the beach. That sandcastle is a part of the beach, right? It's made up of sand from the beach. And if you say, imagine the beach is F, right? The sandcastle is a part of the beach. The beach contains it. But the beach itself isn't a sandcastle. It's not like the whole thing is one unified sandcastle. So the complexity, the sentience of the sandcastle on the beach is where the sandcastle is. And it's a part of the beach, but it's not like the beach is that, if that makes sense.
Who built the beach?
Like
Who built the sandcastle? I was kidding.
Well, hold on.
I'm just kidding.
I like that analogy much more.
That's a really good one. That's a really good analogy.
I don't know if like one part of F could be sentient and the other parts not be sentient. Because sentient seems like the most complex version of what it could be. I don't know how one part could be aware and the other parts be non-aware.
I mean,
it would have to be the highest part of F that would be aware.
Why?
And the other parts would be unaware.
Is it? I mean, I think it's subjective. Like, I mean, I guess maybe the human brain might be the most complex thing in the universe. Maybe the most dense, complex. Yeah. I don't actually know. I know it's very complex. The human brain is really crazy. But I don't know if you can call it the high point. I don't know if F, from its standpoint, like from an objective, non-human view of the universe, you say this is what the high point is. This is the highest version of this. I think it's more us assigning value and saying, oh, well, being a human is pretty great, being conscious and sentient, I like it. And so that's what everything leads towards. I think it's more just we're a byproduct, maybe a necessary byproduct, maybe not, I don't know. But it's more just like we're the byproduct of it.
Yeah, I guess I would agree with you. I only say that because, like, if you gave me a choice, would I rather lose my head or my hand? I'd rather lose my hand because my head is the thing that, like, maintains my sentience, not my hand.
Yeah.
And so that's why I would assume that F its highest point would be its sentience or its consciousness. But yeah, I don't know how it could be conscious or somehow sentient because our version of that exists within it and then not choose or at least be aware of its creation or its spawning or its whatever comes from
it's aware of itself only through us. And when we die, that
I see what you're saying.
Property goes back.
Goes back to it.
Yeah, like just dissolves. Okay, we'll go back to the sandcastle because it's a fun one to do. Seems like it works better. The ocean washes the sandcastle away, and it puts it, and then the sand just goes back to the beach, and it dissolves back into the beach. All the complexity is part of the beach again. All the pebbles that are the sand grains that made up the castle are back on the beach. but it's no longer in that complex form, and that's our brains. Our brains are that complex sandcastle, and it goes back to the beach, dissolves back into it.
Yeah, I still think
I don't think consciousness exists within the brain, personally, but that's. I mean, it would take too long for us to go
we have
into
no
models
idea
of
what
consciousness.
Of course.
anything about consciousness.
Yeah.
I do think though earlier I said cheekily like who built the sandcastle, but I do think
built it?
genuinely that's like could be a question you could apply. Now obviously every analogy falls apart at some point, and so I think that's a fair statement where it sounds like you only can take analogies so far, but it's like if a sandcastle is built on a beach, we know the sandcastle had someone who had intention behind it. There's a mind behind that sandcastle that crafted it in such a way that it would look like a castle. And so if I don't know, I feel like if something simple as a sandcastle requires a mind, why would something infinitely more complex like the universe not require a mind?
Well, I think they're just two different things. Like a sandcastle, it almost built into its definition is human created. But if we could get conditions that could allow a sandcastle to form without humans, say like different conditions, say like wind or different gravity or different things, then you gave it trillions of tries. Yeah, I think a sandcastle would eventually emerge without humans. Now, the universe itself is different. I think the emergence of life, the emergence of the universe are separate questions. I think they're often treated as similar. I think they're pretty separate questions. And then we could go and, we kind of talked about F and how universes could emerge, maybe quantum fluctuations, maybe I don't know, inflation. There's different theories, and I'm not an expert physicist to discuss them. But I guess I think that the best argument about the complexity of the universe is fine tuning. That's one of my favorite theistic arguments. Fine tuning and Kalam, I think are some of the better ones. The moral one doesn't hit me as hard. I think that one just raises uncomfortable questions for society if we ever did fully become atheistic. But I don't think it proves anything. It just makes uncomfortable questions. But fine-tuning about the universe's complexity definitely says something if you're an atheist who believes in a single universe. I think it definitely makes believing in a single universe harder. I don't think it gets you to a personal God, though. Even if you accept creator, I think at best we get fine-tuned for complexity and not fine-tuned for life. I think this is an important distinction because in every argument you see, it's, the universe is fine-tuned for life. If these constants were different, life wouldn't emerge. Therefore, it's fine-tuned for life. And I guess my view is, well, if these constants were different, complexity, like stars or galaxies wouldn't emerge, yes. But to assume that even if there was an intentional creator behind stars and galaxies, the reason they would do that creation is for life and not that life is just a byproduct of the complexity. Did you get what I'm saying? Like, to me, it feels like fine-tuning at best gets you to a creator of complexity, and you still have to kind of show that it's personal and would create the complexity for life, rather than life emerging as, the byproduct in the unfathomably massive universe.
Yeah, I definitely think I think it's fair to say like we have to prove that a creator exists before we prove that creator loves us. But I think once you believe a creator exists, it's not hard to get to that he loves us and he's personal. It's probably because that you got over the largest hump there. But one thing I wanted to think about is like we assign value to things, and so maybe I'm assuming your response might be like, yeah, we assume that, but we don't know. But I was thinking, we are sentient. The universe, the F is not sentient. And so it seems interesting that like we ascribe value to sentience. Like Derry said, he'd rather have his hand cut off than his head. And so it's like, if we value sentience so high, if we do think sentience is like this really high thing, it seems weird to me that something that's not that whatever F is made something almost better than itself by giving us sentience or we developing sentience.
Well, I wouldn't say better. Like, it's better than from our point of view. I would say sentience is better than a dead rock. A sentient human being is worth a lot more than a rock is. That's to us. I don't think to F there's any difference between us and that. Now, maybe if F is in everything and F is in us, then the parts of F that are in us care more about that. But the field as a whole, the beach, like the sandcastle might care about being a sandcastle, but the beach doesn't give a crap. The individual.
So the sandcastle is like, oh, it's way better to be a sandcastle.
The sandcastle's aware.
Yeah, is the analogy sandcastle is a human.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
The sandcastle wants to stay a sandcastle. The beach doesn't care, and the ocean will wash it up and put it and redistribute its grains across the beach.
Hmm.
So the beach might have made something better than it, but from the beach's perspective, it doesn't care. The beach isn't thinking, "Oh man, this sandcastle is better than me." It just is. And the sandcastle might think, "Oh, I'm better than the rest of the beach because I'm a sandcastle. I'm better than this. I'm better than that rock over there because it's dead and I'm sentient." But from the perspective of the high up, from the outside perspective, there's no difference. It doesn't really care.
Hmm.
I don't know if that follows, because there's a difference in the quality between sentience and non-sentience that's different than the quality between sand and like sand being a shape, because sand doesn't know it's a shape. Like a castle doesn't know it's a castle. Only observer knows that a castle is the sand castle. You know what I mean?
Okay, what if we imagine a hypothetical universe where sandcastles, the second they reach a threshold of complexity, become self-aware?
Become self-aware, if only that was
Like just
helpful.
magically have the property of sentience prescribed to them as soon as they hit a level of complexity. And like
I
it's
guess.
totally hypothetical for the sake of
Yeah. Well, hypothetically,
the
they would
analogy.
have to figure out how they were shaped into the form of a sandcastle with no one around.
Would they?
Well, yeah, because we know
Would they,
sandcastles
would they have
don't
to figure
just
well,
self-build.
well what if you have 100 trillion beaches?
Yeah. See, this is the convenience thing again. They're like,
But
there's
it's true
enough
we
wind that it
we
builds it.
observe the
And
100 trillion beaches. It's not a what if there's 100 trillion. It's that there is 100 trillion. Now the question is, can 100 trillion produce a sandcastle?
but
I
you're
say
saying
yes. You
like,
say not without guidance.
I never.
yeah, exactly. And this goes back to the thing where I'm wondering if there's a shit. I don't know where the shifting of the goalpost is, or if that's the right term, but it's like, it seems like we say, oh, I believe this because I can observe it. And then if I bring something up, you can't observe it. Like, well, we don't need to observe it to believe it. And so I'm like,
Wait,
I
what
feel
do you
like there
mean by
might
that?
be.
Like,
So like where I'm like, you're like, we've observed the hundreds of trillions of planets, and so there's no
yeah.
life, and so we believe there's probability here. And then earlier I mentioned something about like a mind or something. I forgot. I said a mind has to create something, and you're like, well, we don't know because we don't observe it, or maybe you said like, I don't know. It feels like, oh, the sentience thing. Like I think it was like we observe humans being sentient. That doesn't mean F is sentient, but like, I guess I don't know how you're applying the observation rule.
Well, okay. I guess with the observation rule, it's not that you need to observe something directly to believe it, right? You haven't literally observed Jesus Christ, but you believe in Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior. I haven't literally observed the Big Bang, but I believe in it because there's evidence and things like that. I've never observed, Neanderthal, but I believe in the Neanderthal because we have observed fossils and stuff. And so, and we have observed the trillions of not it's 10 billion times a trillion star systems. Big number. Now, I'm not saying we have to directly observe something to believe it, but I don't see a reason to, as to the sentience, to ascribe it. So I'm saying we observe sentience in humans. We don't know whether F would be sentient. I don't see a reason to make it sentient. It's not that I don't believe because we haven't observed, but just that I don't see a reason. Whereas with how many star systems there are, how many tries there are, we have observed that. I do think that gives me probable reason to believe that there were this many tries. And I think given the amount of tries, I say, okay, I haven't observed abiogenesis, but I have looked into some research on proteins and stuff, and it seems like given enough tries, this would logically happen. We've observed the tries. So I guess that's how I've been trying to apply observation. It's not like I won't believe unless I directly observe, but I also, I like to have some observation to convince me of why I should believe in something one way or the other.
Yeah, you want some reason that you can put confidence in to believe your things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We all do.
I'm gonna change the subject again really quick. I know we don't have a ton of time left. We've been talking for a long time.
Oh wow,
but
it's 5.
It's been super fun.
I know, yeah. It has been fun. One thing I want to say real quick is, as I've gotten older, I used to really like the and I still do, obviously, arguments from contingency, arguments from complexity, fine tuning, stuff like that. As I've gotten older, I've cared less about abstract arguments, and I've cared a lot more about arguments that affect my day-to-day life. Even though I think they may have weaker philosophical value, they have stronger emotional value, and they affect me more. So like Evan, when you were saying like you are emotionally affected by the idea that you will cease to exist at some point, and like you don't
Yeah.
want that to be the case, like that's something that's real, like because it affects you emotionally. And I like arguments that affect me emotionally. G.K. Chesterton is he wrote this book called Orthodoxy. That's my favorite book, I think, of all time right now. It's really good. It's kind of short, but it's very complex. And in it, he makes this argument that I really like. And he basically says, like, if you were a peasant on a hill somewhere and you experience life, life is brutal and hard, but you wouldn't choose to kill yourself most of the time because there are better things in it than there are worse things in it. Like your experience of love and your experience of eating and seeing a sunset and beauty and having sex and having children, like those experiences in life are better than non-experience. And he said, if you were to like know you're about to die, like would you feel a sense, and you'd like experience all these good things, would you feel a sense of thankfulness, or would you feel a sense of like this is just a cold machine that I exist in? And it's of course not the same for everybody, but I think for the most part, when people experience things that are good, we have a sense of thankfulness to something. And obviously not everyone has a sense of thankfulness to the same thing, but for some reason, when we experience things that are good, we are thankful to the universe or to the thing that gave it to us, the sun or whatever it is, for that experience. Like when I see a sunset, I'm like, wow, like that's amazing. And I'm thankful that I got to experience that. And his argument is like obvious. Like if there's some kind of gift that is the thing that you're getting, it comes from some kind of giver of that gift. And that's just like the experience that we have as human beings. So experiential arguments, I feel like are pretty strong to me nowadays because I feel them so much more. And doesn't make them stronger philosophically, but what do you think about that?
I think it's interesting. I definitely haven't heard that one before. About thankfulness. I do think that's interesting. I don't think it necessarily points you to God. I guess an analogy I could give, I'll give up on the beach analogy. Imagine you have a bunch of like, you code a bunch of race cars and you code it with like really advanced AI to the like future AI to the point where they're sentient, but you don't really give them a ton of control over the race car, just enough to inhibit the like race car. And then you race them and they like by random, you haven't decided a winner. You haven't said, I'm going to tune this one to be the fastest. You just race them. And one of them wins. And he's like, man, I'm really thankful that I got to do this, the sentient AI, even if it didn't really direct it. It's not like a human was sitting there that said, you're going to win. They just kind of let it happen. And it should just be thankful to luck, to the chances, rather than to a sentient being that intentionally programmed it to win or rigged the race so it would win. I guess to me, when I'm thankful for things, because I am grateful often. I say I live a pretty good life. I'm happy with it.
Yeah.
I certainly prefer this over non-existence. I look out, I see a beautiful sunset, and I'm like, wow, this is so beautiful. But I might have some sense of gratitude that I'm able to experience this, but not towards a God, if that makes sense. I mean, just from my own perspective, like how I experience these things.
Yeah. I think his argument is not necessarily that you feel grateful towards God, but that you can feel grateful at all. Because where does the AI get the idea to be grateful towards anything? Because if in your analogy, the AI would naturally be thankful towards luck, that would make sense because it's just pure luck. But most of the time we aren't thankful to just pure luck. We're thankful in some higher spiritual sense. Like we don't ascribe it to not a tribe. We don't ascribe it to a machine or to luck. We usually ascribe it to some kind of thing that gave it to us.
Well, I think it's different for everybody for what they believe in. I think
Sure.
almost every Christian will, be thankful to God when something good happens to them. Thank you, God, for my sister not dying of leukemia. She survived the surgery. Oh my gosh, thank you. A Buddhist would, I don't think they believe in God. Let me change it. A Hindu would be thankful to Brahman or whatever the overarching God is there. An atheist would probably just be thinking they're lucky stars.
Mhm.
So I really just think it's a subjective thing. I think we do all experience a sense of gratitude, or most of us do. Where that came from, something along the evolutionary line to do with our brains and chemicals, I don't know. But I think we all kind of experience it differently in our own way. I don't think it's all necessarily reaching out towards the same overarching entity.
Cool. I just wanted to hear your response on that one.
Yeah.
Ethan, anything you have to say?
Oh, we could talk forever. I could be going for like 3 more hours. We have been going for 2 hours already, just about.
Yeesh.
So I know, Derry, you have a hard out, I think. Is that correct?
I have to go pretty soon, but not immediately if we want to
Okay.
talk about something else.
Well, I was
You
just
like,
question
you want to do like 10 more?
questions.
10 more questions.
Like 10 more minutes or
10 more
15
2-hour
minutes?
segments.
Oh, sure. Yeah, 10 more questions. We've done 2 questions so far.
Yeah,
We're gonna do 10
we
more in
could
this
do
episode.
10 more hours. Sure. I have enough storage on my
Sure, let's do 10 more minutes.
So I'm curious on what you make of morality, because I think in the view of evolution, I've not heard a satisfactory argument for morality. So I'm curious on your perspective. Feel free to go for it, and there you go.
Yeah. This
You
one
can say
is
you just don't know,
it's a
too.
fun one.
It's fine.
No, okay, I'll explain my best not rationalization, but like my best attempt to explain what I think about morality. This one's always a fun one. I've heard it a lot, and it's kind of hard to do this in a debate, because I do think that the theistic position is more emotionally favored in this one. I think that objective morality, right? I don't think it exists. I think it's a human construct and what is right and wrong. Now, someone will say, oh, so you don't believe the Holocaust was objectively evil. So you don't believe stomping on a baby's head is objectively evil. Well, from my point of view, those things are evil. I say, no, that's absolutely evil. Nobody should do that. Let's see what makes it evil. I'll say, well, as a society, we evolved to have empathy and to feel these things and to be cohesive, and it is ingrained into what we are. And they'll say, okay, but nothing makes it objectively wrong from the outside. And I'll say, well, I guess it's not metaphysically grounded in anything. There's no property outside of humans that says good or bad, but we give value and meaning to things. And so to us, we give value and meaning to other human lives because they're like us. We don't want to experience our heads being stomped on, so we shouldn't do that to others, right? We should treat them how we'd want to be treated, because partly that's ingrained in us because it's how we survived, by cooperating as a social species. The hunter who goes out alone and just lives by himself is probably going to die and get eaten by a lion, versus the tribe that hunts together is going to catch their. So we view others as like ourselves. We recognize that I recognize that both of you guys have your own experience and POV, and you have your own life, and that I recognize that you experience life like I do, and that from that I say you guys should have a good life and we should treat each other well. But I don't think it's objectively grounded in something beyond us. I don't think there's a metaphysical necessity that's like saying, no, this is what goodness is, this is what wrongness is. I think it's up to us to kind of decide that. I think we've created a pretty good system. It's far from perfect. I think there's plenty of injustices and things that are evil in my worldview. And I don't think that all morality is equal, because I'll hear this point a lot, which is, oh, what gives you the right to impose your morality on someone else? What if they say, I think murder is good? Why can you impose saying murder is wrong onto them? And I think part of it is majority rules, which is kind of an unsatisfactory answer, because at one point slavery was seen as good by the majority. So I think it is up to us to try to just follow the principle of empathy and treating others how we want to be treated. But it really is gray. There's no objective set,
Mhm.
So I guess that's my best attempt to go over morality.
No, I appreciate it. I appreciate you saying it's kind of gray, because I think the atheist has to hold it in tension and say it's gray, because because they can't objectively ground it in anything. Just say like absolutes, right? Which I appreciate you're saying it's gray, because when they're like, oh, it's grounded in empathy, I wonder, I'm like, is empathy, should we expect that on an evolutionary model? And maybe the answer is, well, yes, because we're all humans, we want our species to survive. But isn't it the case in evolution, it's not the case that every species cares about their own species surviving? They care about themselves surviving. You know what I mean? Like,
It really depends on the species. So, for example, tigers are pretty much they're pretty much lone wolves or lone tigers, so to say. As in, they don't hunt in groups usually. In fact, a male might kill a female's babies so that he can have sex with her and pass on his genes. So in
mhm,
some animals, it's absolutely the case. They're selfish. In humans, it's not. And in other social species, not just humans. So killer whales, for example, or you can look at bees, which like most of them don't pass on their genes, and it's just the queen who passes on her genes. It's whatever strategy works most successfully, and it's different for each species. For
mhm,
us, the strategy that worked most successfully is when we work together and we put our brains together. Because an individual human who's selfish and is like, I'm going to murder that woman's baby so I can fuck her and have kids with her and pass on my genes, well, he's not going to get very far. The tribes which
mhm,
practiced that died out because they couldn't coordinate. The tribes that worked together and had empathy were the ones that succeeded in the long term. And so that's why it was so ingrained into us. And you could say the same thing with things like elephants or orcas, like other social species which work together. And again, it's a bit different. Their own internal sense of morality and what's acceptable is different for each of these
mhm,
species. We aren't the only ones with a sense of empathy. Elephants have empathy. They've displayed altruism, helping other animals when it has no benefit to themselves, like from other species, with
mhm.
zero benefit to themselves. They've actually been observed burying their dead, and I think pretty
Elephants are
sophisticated
so cool.
behaviors.
They're so cool.
Um,
Yeah.
and so I think
So
it just depends on the species and it evolves in different ways. And as social species, it manifested in this way for us.
okay. So, Derry, I'll say one more thing and then you can jump in here. I thought you had your hand up. So
I did, yeah.
yeah. So you said that with evolution, the species develops empathy because it helps them move forward, or they develop whatever means they need to move forward. Was that correct? I hear you right?
Mhm. Yeah, like to
Okay.
survive and be
Okay.
successful.
So then I would say, would you then say there's no problem with the meat farms we have where cows are just in these little cages and they're just fed and fattened up to be killed to create steaks for us?
I
Because a
think there is a
society,
problem.
right? So that's a problem for the atheists, I think, because that is a practice that we are doing to move our
Mhm.
society further. Like we can become stronger through, like humans. If you ate a ton of red meat, that makes you stronger. If you like, there's chicken farms where all the chicken just lives in this little tiny cage and they just grow and get fat and they die. And they say like free range and all they do is just, or like grain fed and grass fed. It's just like a conveyor belt of grass. It's disgusting. I hate it. But we benefit, right? We eat meat, we eat chicken,
Mhm.
and our society gets stronger. We get smarter, we get faster, we dominate the planet more. And so why, or I guess it'd be an interesting kind of question where it's like, in the evolutionary process, that's a good thing because we're helping our species go forward.
Mhm. Well, I think for most of humans' existence, we behave very tribalistically and selfishly, which is why we allowed slavery to form. We had this almost selfish view of, oh, this is our group. It's not even species. Like we didn't evolve as one unified species, but rather tribes interacting. So one tribe in, say, ancient Greece might have enslaved other people, and it was just totally normal. We're dominating more, we're expanding, we're bettering ourselves. This is better for our survival.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the notions of universal empathy, that we're all human on this globalistic scale, only emerged relatively recently. Like
Right,
before
but
then, humans did fucked up stuff.
yeah, yeah. I'm not
Um,
talking about human to human. I'm talking about like human to cow right now.
yeah,
How do
I
you
know.
say that's bad? Oh, you're
I'm
getting
getting
there.
there.
Okay.
So we did really fucked up stuff, and eventually we kind of realized we had this realization as a species that hey, we all are human. If we're already willing to be empathetic towards those in our tribe, in our town, in our country, whatever, why not extend it? Because we're not really that different. And I think um, there is a lot of this thinking that hasn't gone to animals yet, like cows, chickens, pigs. We still treat them like shit in the factory farms. In East Asia, I think they treat them even worse in some parts of China. I mean, it's really, really inhumane. And I think a lot of people have this sort of cognitive dissonance, including myself, because I eat meat. I don't like it. I plan at some point in my life avoiding buying anything from factory farms, but I'm pretty sure my college, the dining hall buys it from there, and it's just a part of my life. So I recognize it's kind of hypocritical of me to be talking about this. But I don't like the factory farms. I've seen videos; it looks disgusting, and I recognize that these creatures have a brain. They have a POV, because in my view, there's no soul, so our POV comes from our brain, which means they have some degree of consciousness in their own POV because they also have a brain. I don't think they should be made to suffer. I think it's wrong that they suffer. Because I recognize this principle of empathy towards myself and other humans, and I say, well, I don't think humans are metaphysically special. I think we're just the most developed brains on the planet, but that doesn't mean that the other brains we shouldn't care about. I mean, if you knew someone who's like 50 IQ, like a really just like mentally, challenged person, you're not going to treat them like shit just because they're dumber. And I think it's the same with animals. So I think it's why I think eating meat is wrong. I think a lot of people haven't realized this or don't want to realize it because of how comfortable it is to eat meat and get cheap steaks and everything. And also because, yeah, it's cheap. It benefits us as a species. But I don't think we should view it purely in a species perspective once we've become this advanced. And we used to. We used to be very tribalistic. As I said, we had slavery. We had this very tribalistic mentality, and we've kind of broken free from that. Not fully, but we've made a lot of work towards that. And I think animals will be an eventual next step. I just think as a species, we haven't fully hit there yet. I hope eventually we overcome this and transcend it to animals to the point where we don't treat them as cruelly as we do, or maybe we'll be full vegetarian in the future. I don't know, lab-grown meat or something. I honestly don't know, but I hope we stop treating them like that.
A question really quick, and maybe you've already have said the answer for this. If we evolve our morality from tribalistic thinking, right?
Mhm.
What's good for the tribe? Is it the same answer for why we value like the rebel, like the abolitionist, the civil rights activists, the people who hid the Jews from the Nazis? Like those are people that are going against the mob rule or whatever the society is saying is good at the time, and we value those people as like moral pillars or monoliths in this community when they're going against the face of like the mob morality.
Well, I think it's when, so if we view something as being generally immoral, like the Holocaust, we say, no, killing innocent people is wrong. We shouldn't commit a genocide. Going against that, especially in retrospect, is viewed as a good thing. Now, in Nazi Germany, going against and hiding Jews was seen as terrible. You're hiding Jews in your attic. What the hell? You're a Jew lover. We got to kill you now. You're a traitor to the homeland. So to their point of view, it was very immoral. But now looking back, we say, well, no, actually, the Holocaust was wrong. It was evil. And the people who hid Jews in the attic, those were good. Those were the good guys, the ones who hid them. They went against society, knowing that they could suffer for it and they would face societal repercussions. And they did it anyway. So that's why we kind of give them that idolization, that, yeah, it's a rebellious nature, but it's rebellious for a good reason. If that makes sense. Now, if someone goes and decides to be rebellious for a bad reason, say you have a well-functioning democracy and you have some rebellious teen who's like, yeah, man, let's bring about fascism. I'm going to rebel against this and tear down the system, bring about some fascist dictatorship, and we're going to jail all the minorities. Like, that wouldn't be seen as a positive rebellious thing. That'd be like, oh, that's an extremist. Throw him, So I think it really is like dependent on the general view of morality, what's good, what's bad. And then people decide how to proceed from there, judging whether someone going against society is good or bad.
So you think all of morality goes back to a human's desire to survive, which would just be the survival of the fittest?
Well, no. Because I think, like, you can have humans who sacrifice themselves. So you can have someone, and then someone in like a tribe might
They
have
sacrifice
succeeded.
themselves so that more people can survive.
Yeah.
So it is survival.
Yeah, I mean, I think our morality does originally just come from empathy and, chemicals and empathy that evolve for the tribe to survive and the species to eventually survive. I think all of our morality does come back from that. But I think so does everything else. So does our logic. So does our hair. So do our eyes. So does literally everything. The way our brain constructs the world comes from evolution. And so just because that morality isn't grounded in something metaphysically, like, well, neither is my logic, no.
Where do you think that desire to survive comes from?
Oh, well, it's the one
Why is that what we desire?
The ones that survived, the ones that died. Only, like, we're literally hardwired for survival and reproduction since the first living, since the first RNA that replicated, the one that survived or passed on its genes is the one that then the only ones left are the ones that did survive. And you get more and more complex. The only cells left are the ones whose ancestors survived and reproduced. The only first animals, the ones left, are the ones who survived. And so it gets so ingrained into us by this point in the evolutionary timeline to survive and to pass on our genes, or to have someone in our family pass on their genes and maybe sacrifice yourself because you believe in some higher thing, right? But it's ingrained in us for our species to survive, because that is what our entire story is.
I just don't know where the original system comes from, because in my mind, I am hardwired to recreate because I was created, or respawn because I was spawned, or whatever you want to say. Like I share because I am part of God in a way, right? Like I was created from him. And so the parts of him that I share in are the parts that are me being created. And so that's why the system that I have, whether from evolution or not, is one to recreate. That's like what my base form does, is to recreate. And that's what my base desire is. If I'm put in a situation, even if I'm hopeless, like I still desire to recreate. Like my biology will try to make me survive, even if I try to stop breathing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I get your perspective is different. But I gotta go.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it was great. It was great being on here. It was great. Great conversation.
Yeah.
Anytime you want to come back on, you can come back on. Let us know if you have another topic you want to talk about, or an argument you come across, or if you start even exploring different religions more or something and want to know our perspective on them. We'd love to talk.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for coming on, man. Really appreciate it. And everyone else, have a great week.